When it comes to staying in the game, a lot of older grapplers think the answer is to become harder to kill, get tougher, get fitter, push harder, grind more, just become the kind of leathery, nail-chewing old bastard who can suffer longer than the next guy. But that's not really the highest expression of jiu-jitsu, and nobody showed that more clearly than Rickson Gracie. Because Rickson's genius wasn't just that he was as hard as nails. It wasn't just that he was disciplined, tough, and incredibly capable. It was that he understood something most people still don't really understand now. Jiu-Jitsu is not just about making yourself stronger. It's about playing in a way that makes the other man weaker. In this video, I'm going to break down 3 key things older grapplers can learn from Rickson right now. Because when you study Rickson properly, what you're really looking at is not just a great fighter. You're looking at a man who understood how to manage conflict at a very deep level. And that becomes more valuable, not less, as we get older. I'm Hadrian, a Jiu-Jitsu black belt coach and former competitor. And on this channel, we talk about how to train smarter, roll longer, and stay dangerous as the years sail by. Let's start with strategy. But when Rickson talks about strategy, he doesn't just mean it in the normal sense of how do I get from A to B. He's using that word in a broader way. He's really talking about concepts and about the deeper principles that make his whole style so effective. The things underneath the techniques, like how you engage with force itself, how you position, how you use angles, how you use weight, how you create an exchange where your strengths can function and the other guy's strengths start falling apart. That, to me, is the heart of jiu-jitsu, not just building attributes, but arranging things that the other man's weapons, that make the other man's weapons stop working properly. That's the deeper game, not just making yourself better, but making him less effective. A good example is the guard, playing guard. A lot of people play guard in a sort of a lazy, flat way. They're on their back, square in front of their opponent, carrying pressure, and they're telling themselves they're playing guard. But in reality, they're just there, underneath somebody, right in front of the danger, hoping timing or flexibility saves them. That's not the same thing as having a dangerous guard. In a real fight, if you stay directly in front of someone, you're in the firing line. You don't want to be there. You want to cut the angle. You shift off to the side. You stop standing where the danger is strongest. The same principle applies on the ground. When you angle off in guard, when you get onto your hip, when you stop lying there like a dead fish and actually change your alignment, everything else changes. Your opponent's base gets compromised. His ability to hit you cleanly or apply pressure cleanly starts to fall away. Meanwhile, your ability to attack, off-balance, control, and set traps starts to rise. That's what Rickson meant by strategy, not a move, a concept that changes the whole exchange. Another beautiful example of this is what Rickson calls connection. He talks a lot about connection, and it's one of the most important ideas older grapplers can take from him. The way he uses the term, connection is basically imposing your weight on another person's movement, making them carry you, making your pressure come alive through whatever they're trying to do. That's not just when they're scrambling under side control. It's when they're trying to apply a submission. It's when they're trying to escape one. It's when they're trying to bridge, turn, shrimp, create space, whatever it is. By all accounts, Rickson had this incredible ability to make people carry his weight in a way that made everything cost more. So whatever they did, it was expensive. Every movement took something out of them. Every attempt to escape came with a tax attached. That's why people say his style felt so oppressive. It wasn't just pressure in the usual sense. It was intelligent pressure, alive pressure. His weight seemed to follow people. It stayed with them. So even when they moved, they never really escaped the burden of him. And for older grapplers, this is massive because it shows us a way out of the young man's game. We do not need to win every exchange with speed and wild athleticism. We can build a style where the other man carries the cost. We can make him work harder than us. We can make his mistakes more expensive. That is old man gold right there. And that leads naturally into endurance, because one of the most beautiful examples of Rickson's strategy was how he managed his own conditioning. Rickson understood that the fight didn't begin when hands were laid on each other. It started much earlier than that. It started in his own nervous system, in his breathing, in his ability to remain calm while the other man was already halfway into a panic before the real work had even begun. He knew that if he could control himself better than the other guy could control himself, then the whole fight would start tilting before either of them looked even visibly tired. While the other guy was burning with adrenaline and anticipation, Rickson was staying loose, he was staying calm, he was staying organized. Then once the clash actually began, the gap got wider. The other man's system would start to run away from him, while Rickson was still composed, still thinking, still cruising along. One man was being dragged into tension and into panic. The other still had his hand on the wheel. And that's not just fitness, that is endurance as a skill, that is endurance as a weapon. And that matters because most grapplers still think endurance is mainly about doing more work. They think the answer is just to grind harder. Rickson's example points to something deeper. Real endurance is the ability to stay efficient when things get hard. It's the ability to keep your breathing, your movement, and your mind organized under pressure. It is the ability to stop energy leaking out of you every time the pace rises. This is where breathing comes in, and this matters massively for older grapplers. There comes a point where we can't just keep adding more grind to make up for poor mechanics and poor regulation. We have to become more skillful. We have to understand how breathing actually works under pressure. Can we stay low and diaphragmatic instead of breathing high and into the chest and neck? Can we exhale properly when we exert instead of bracing and trapping pressure in the body? Can we stay connected to the breath when the round gets messy, or do we lose our head and abandon it the second things get real? Because that's what usually happens. The pace spikes, the scramble starts, and suddenly everything just goes to shit. The jaw tightens, the shoulders lift, the breath gets trapped, the whole system starts racing. Then afterwards we tell ourselves, oh, we're just getting older. And maybe sometimes that's true. But a lot of the time, it's not just age, it's a lack of skill in how we manage our endurance. And the good news is, of course, like any other skill, this can be trained. We can improve ribcage mechanics, we can improve how the diaphragm functions, we can improve how we breathe during effort and how quickly we recover after effort. We can improve our tolerance to discomfort so that the body doesn't panic the second CO2 starts rising. We can get better at regaining composure quickly. That is endurance skill. Once you start seeing it that way, endurance stops being this separate punishment block you bolt onto your training. It becomes a part of the art. And that's why I created my Roll Forever cheat sheet. It's a free resource which offers 7 simple cues that are going to help you roll stronger for longer. Warm-up primers, between round resets, post-roll recovery cues, all of the concepts that Rickson used so effectively that I'm talking about in this video. It's all in there, laid out in a way that you can plug right into your next session. Super simple, super effective. Click the link below. Now, once you understand endurance that way, the next question is obvious. How quickly can you recover and do it again? And that brings us to recovery. This is where older grapplers either get wise or they slowly start to fall apart. Rickson was big on recovery. He had a saying, I'm going to paraphrase here, but it was something along the lines of, if you think the more you train, the better you get, you're wrong. The more you recover, the better you get. When you're younger, you can get away with a lot. You can waste energy, sleep badly, redline rounds, recover poorly, and still bounce back enough to think you're doing all right. But as you get older, recovery stops being optional. It becomes one of the main things deciding whether your skill can actually show up consistently at all. Rickson understood that deeply. He understood that recovery is not some soft little extra you think about when class is over. It is central to performance. In fact, you could argue it is part of performance itself. Most people treat recovery like something that happens after the fight, after the round, after the session. But the elite don't see it that way. Elite athletes don't train it that way. Recovery happens during the fight. It happens between rounds, between exchanges, between scrambles, even between breaths. And that's a massive distinction because recovery at the highest level is not passive. It's active regulation. It's knowing how to bring yourself back under control quickly. It's knowing how to reduce unnecessary tension, settle the system, and reorder before the next wave hits. That's why two people can look similar on paper, similar skill, similar fitness, similar experience, and yet one of them always looks calm while the other looks like he's drowning. One knows how to recover in real time. The other one only knows how to survive until the bell rings. And for those of us over 40, this may be one of the most important lessons of all. Longevity doesn't just come from avoiding catastrophic injury. It comes from reducing the amount of chaos we keep generating in training. If every round is frantic, if every exchange is fueled by tension, if we're always breathing high and clenching and surging when we don't need to, then we are creating a debt that the body eventually stops agreeing to pay. And that's when the little things start piling up. The neck is always a bit stiff, the shoulder never quite settles, the back is tight for days, the nervous system doesn't come down properly. Then we shrug and we say, well, I'm just getting older. And yes, again, some of it may be age, but a lot of it is inefficiency. A lot of it is poor regulation. A lot of it is training hard without training smart. That's why Rickson's lesson around recovery matters so much. Recovery is a performance amplifier. It is not separate from the art. It is part of the art. It is a skill, just like timing is a skill, just like connection is a skill. And once you start treating it that way, everything changes. Your rounds change, your decisions change, your pacing changes, your consistency on the mat changes, and ultimately, your lifespan in jiu-jitsu changes. So what does this actually look like in practice? It means you stop waiting until the round's over to recover. You recover in the little spaces, after the scramble, during the exhale. You learn to unclench what doesn't need to be clenched. You stop carrying the whole fight in your jaw and shoulders. You get your breathing back under control quickly after a hard effort. And you start pacing like a man who plans to be here 10 years from now, not like some lunatic trying to win one 5-minute death match in a village hall on a Tuesday night. You want some recovery techniques? Make sure you download the free cheat sheet. You'll find a bunch of recovery stuff, super simple, super powerful. You can use it right in your next session. Again, the link is below. So look, if we bring this all together, what are older grapplers really taking from Rickson? First, strategy. Not strategy in the sense of some grand plan, but strategy as a concept. Angle, alignment, connection, the intelligent weakening of the other man's game. Second is endurance, not just building a bigger gas tank, but learning how to manage yourself under pressure so that less energy gets wasted and more control stays online. Third is recovery, not as an afterthought, but as part of the practice itself, something you build into the round, into the scramble, into the breath, moment to moment. This is where old school, high-level jiu-jitsu starts to become a real path for longevity. Not because it makes you soft, but because it makes you sharper, more efficient. Not because it removes hardship, but because it teaches you how not to waste yourself unnecessarily inside that hardship. Guys, if any of this resonates, let me know in the comments which of these three concepts matters most in your game right now. Strategy, endurance, or recovery. And while you're here, watch this video next, where I talk about the one thing guaranteed to end an older grappler's jiu-jitsu journey way before it should end, and the mindset shift that will keep that from happening to you. I'll see you there.